management research. Hello and welcome to the Management Research Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Eugene. Hello and welcome to the next episode in our mini-series on motivation. In our last episode, we talked about the Hygiene theory of motivation, and we introduced the idea by Herzberg, who said that the motivation has to be split into two factors. The first one is the hygiene factor. If you lack some items from this factor, then it will cause the dissatisfaction. But if you have them, it will not cause motivation. On the other hand, you have a second factor, which is motivation or motivators. If you have items that relate to this factor, you will increase motivation, but you might not decrease dissatisfaction. So theoretically, your employees can be highly motivated and highly dissatisfied, or be very satisfied and be very motivated, or be satisfied but not motivated. So there are several combinations of what you can have with this factor that also allow you to explain the real-life work scenarios where you may see people who are motivated but dissatisfied. In our today's episode, we are going to talk about the dynamic nature of his theory. And Herzberg, in his paper in 1974, he said that actually these factors will be seen differently in different types of organizations. And he gives an example, for example, the assembly line. If you have the assembly line, and if you look at the factors of dissatisfaction and motivation, you will see that it looks completely different than, for example, in a consulting agency where you have a completely different type of tasks. For example, if we talk about the assembly line, it's very hard to motivate somebody by work itself because it's a kind of boring routine work where you have to stay at the conveyor belt and do the similar activities. The responsibility is also not given here, just because you have a very simple task. And if you think about the factories of Henry Ford, you will see that on this conveyor belt, there was not so much of advancement, not so much of growth, not so much of responsibility that a person could take, and the work itself was pretty boring. But you can, for example, introduce something like achievement and motivation for achievement, that you say that there is something you can do better than something else. The dissatisfaction, they remain the same as in the initial theory, so nothing changes with regard to security, status, salary, working conditions, interpersonal relations, supervision, and company policy administration. If you look at a different type of organizations, for example, the consultancy agencies that we have now, you will notice that they put much more efforts into motivators. They try to motivate people by achievement, by recognition for achievement, work itself, responsibility. At the same time, it is very seldom that you have the consultancy agency where they provide you basic salary and nothing else. So mostly the basic salary is completely absent or is at the basic level, and the best thing that you can achieve with your work is thanks to your achievement, what you do with your clients, the results that you achieve with your clients, the new projects that you develop, the new customers that you invite, and so on. So they would have a completely different profile. But Herzberg said it is not only about the type of work, it is also about the situation at work. And what happens that actually this perception of motivators and dissatisfactors, it shifts each time something external happens to the firm. For example, a big hygiene shock. If a shock happens, like for example, a short crisis or something that we had, or an external event that happened, like an earthquake or something like this, will immediately change the way people perceive different factors. For instance, if a crisis comes, so the shock once evolves into a crisis, and we had recently one with the COVID-19, for example, then all of a sudden different things become motivators. And he said that, for example, the company policy administration may become a motivator. They stop being a dissatisfaction factor, they become a motivator. And I can tell you about my observation of my wife's organization. When the COVID-19 started, all organizations, also our university where I used to work at the moment, they didn't know what to do with this. And those organizations, they took responsibility and introduced clarity in the first weeks where they said, nobody will be fired. At least we can guarantee it for the next, 3, 4, 5 months, depending on how the situation evolves. But for the next 5 months, nothing will happen bad to you. We don't know what exactly is going to happen, but you all will have an opportunity to work from home. You will all receive additional equipment that you will need to work from home, and so on. They made their employees much more motivated than the other employees. So it was not about the dissatisfaction, it was about the motivation all of a sudden. And this indicates that the initial idea by Herzberg that there are two factors, dissatisfaction and motivation, and they are all related to several items. For example, dissatisfaction is related to security, status, salary, working conditions, interpersonal relations, supervision, company policy, administration. And motivators are related to achievement, recognition for achievement, work itself, responsibility, advancement, and growth. They all might change their nature if the situation outside the firm also changes. Keep that in mind when you work on the motivation in your firm, and if there is an external shock, it can happen that the thing that you usually hold for motivators are not motivators anymore. As I told you in the event of COVID-19, all of a sudden the clarity of company policy, the clear and powerful administration became a motivator that made people willing to walk an extra step. I hope it was interesting and helpful. Wish you all the best, and I'll see you in the next episode where we're going to talk about how the crisis in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, had impact on motivation in firms. Wish you all the best and good luck.